Davis Smith, and thank you so much for joining us. Now, it's been a long time since we talked, and there's obviously so much to cover. But we'll be talking about everything, and most of it revolves around this, National Convention, or as it's also known, NatCon. We'll be covering everything, the electrifying speech about bipartisanship and identity in Christ from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air's Clarence Mingo, to Mr. Cal Callan getting whipped cream in the face, to melodious performances from Cac's crew. Nope. Anyway, other highlights from NatCon included Mr. Peter Martin, the human being, not the volleyball team or the crime syndicate that shares the same name, getting dunked in a dunk tank, Mason Hook doing his best Bernie Madoff impression, Robbie Whaley just losing his mind with carpet skates, plus small groups, frisbee, volleyball, Thai ads, coffee house, and whatever the heck this was.
You know what? Okay, I know what to do. Boys choir. Here we go. Oh no, what is happening right now? Oh no. What is happening right now? Oh no, this is a bad thing.
Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for your host, Mr. Brent Fassbinder!
But before we get into all that, we have to talk about TeenPact Judicial, which occurred just this past week. You know, the one for the nerds. I mean, the archetype seems natural. I mean, who would want to spend a week at a Jesus government camp, right? That's weird, right? Right? That's just weird, man. All joking aside, however, Judicial does indeed get a bad rap for being the hardest, most politically technical, most grueling, most emotionally draining, and soul-crushing alumni event in existence. While there's no doubt about it, most would consider it the hardest hands down. That doesn't mean it isn't thrilling. In fact, that's why it's so fun.
Some people might say the same thing about prison.
My therapist says it's best not to talk about prison anymore. But every single person at the event is being asked to complete some pretty rigorous tasks. I mean, just arguing in front of judges is not child's play, as there's significant risk of many tears and moderate to severe emotional trauma. Every single person there has to do these tough things. At no point throughout the event can you look to your right or to your left and think that someone else has it easier. It's kind of like trench warfare. It's rough on everyone. No, instead, it's a community and a fellowship that's built off of the idea that everyone is there for everyone during and because of the stress. Not only that, but the staff go to great effort to make sure that it's not just a camp full of school. The staff have taken vans of students to work on their arguments at Starbucks. And if that isn't your thing, there's always Frisbee at Liberty's top-of-the-line sports facilities and the best TeenPact food you can find. Long story short, yes, Judicial is a strenuous event, but it's also an event where you can learn you're actually a lot more intelligent than you thought. Oh, and just in case anyone is still a little worried about the stress, you can relax. There's actually a mandatory nap time when things get a little bit too much. So you remember how you felt the night before your first 4-day? Dreading spending the next week with political geeks? Now remember how you felt on Thursday of that same week? Yeah, that's what I thought. So go mow a few lawns, babysit some kids, sell your baby siblings to some gypsies, or just grab your parents' credit card and sign yourself up for TeenPact Judicial next year. And now, this.
And now, Johnny Gauze casually sips LaCroix and makes Chuck Norris jokes about himself.
But ladies and gents, you must be wondering about me. I once brought a knife to a gunfight, simply to make things fair. My tears cure all disease. It's too bad I never cry. When I drive a car off the lot, it increases in value. Well, last night, I slept with a nightlight. Not because I fear the dark, but because the dark fears me. I'm from all four corners of the earth. I raised Tim Eccles himself, and my heart pumps enough blood for the whole human race. As for growth, I used to struggle with boasting. But now, I'm just honest about myself. This morning, after a brief soak in my hot tub, after playing with my young tiger and negotiating some peace treaties in the Middle East, it's time to kick back for a moment and resume our story. Most people refer to my diary as the Guinness Book of World Records. My fortune cookies simply read, "Congratulations." Mosquitoes and ticks refuse to bite me, simply out of respect. If I were to pat you on the back, you'd want to list that on your resume. Amazon bought out Whole Foods, but I bought out Amazon. When I order a pizza, the delivery boy tips me. But I'd like to finish with just a short story of when I was younger. When I was young, a rattlesnake bit me. After 5 excruciating days of pain, the rattlesnake finally died. I'm the most interesting man in the world. Thank you for your attention, my friends.
Moving on, we turn to our main story, which is the biggest news in TeenPact right now, and that is President Carissa Gould. The TeenPact presidential election again reached its conclusion on election night at National Convention, with the Gould-DeMoss campaign destroying its closest competition in a landslide victory. The second victorious campaign to do so in many years. If you recall, the presidential campaigns as a whole started much later this year, as they had from when they did in previous years. Precedent established by the successful Hale McHugh campaign last year, and the Gould-DeMoss ticket was no exception. They started off with an announcement video in March and solidified a very strong and tight-knit ground game at the state level. Succeeding where many had failed, they managed to maintain strong campaign structure throughout the campaign season, at the event relying heavily upon grassroots support. While Carissa had the national stage of TeenPact figuratively for several years as a staffer, she also benefited from name recognition afforded her previous status as a national representative and senator. Her running mate, Toby Angel Kiss DeMoss, however, was a newcomer to the national spotlight, having never previously staffed or been elected to national office. He brought a charismatic charm and soft-spoken demeanor to the ticket, and they worked together as an effective team.
And he's super cute.
Gould-DeMoss faced significant opposition in the general election in the form of the steady Noah Krista Kaufman campaign and the surging Truman Forehand Grant Johnson campaign. The former had struggled to gain momentum coming into the event and was hoping for their big break, and the latter was enjoying a recent hype wave, but still navigating the process of translating that into electoral votes and name recognition. On site, each campaign leapt into action, courting voters, but it all came down to the much-hyped presidential debates, or mud pit death matches, as they're affectionately known. As usual, the vice presidential debates didn't significantly alter voter perception, as each of the candidates performed well and garnered a handful of well-delivered lines to their name. They still matter, though, right?
Yes, they do.
Yeah, okay. During the presidential debates, all stops were pulled, and Jeremiah Fitzpatrick tore into the candidates like a ravenous pack of wolverines on an unprotected sack of day-old filet mignon. Well, basically, just as you'd expect Jeremiah Fitzpatrick to talk to presidential candidates. All 3 of the candidates were roasted alive when it came to their immigration policy, but they all found their footing on their home turf of relating their message. Truman Forehand captured the attention of the audience by passionately relaying the story of the common song, It Is Well.
I'm going to tell you a story that you've probably heard before. In the late 1800s, a man lived in Chicago, a successful businessman and attorney. But then, in the Chicago fire, his investments and his law practice were burned to the ground. And then a few months later, his young son died from scarlet fever. Wanting a new start, he decided to move his family to England. And so he put his wife and his 3 daughters on a ship, and he sent them, only to find out a few weeks later that his 3 daughters had drowned in an accident at sea. His life was absolutely destroyed. And so he got on a ship and he sailed to England himself. And as he passed over the spot where his daughters had drowned, and the captain pointed out to him where they were, he went to the railing on the deck. He got out a piece of notebook paper, and he began to write. Though Satan should buffet, though trials should come, whatever my lot, you have taught me to say, it is well with my soul. That's what it means to rejoice. To rejoice is being able to say that it is well with my soul, even if it's not well with my emotions or my relationships or my family or my health or anything else in my life. Whether I'm happy or I'm sad, it is well with my soul because I know Jesus Christ.
I could listen to that man's storytelling voice all day. But moving on, Carissa Gould also had this to say in regard to her message.
Check, where are you directing your extravagant love? Are you directing it to the things in creation, whether that be travel, academics, sports, people, social life, social status, maybe even TeenPact is something you find yourself directing your love to, or are you directing your love to the Creator?
Yes, it's a very important topic and one that Christians often find themselves guilty of. Directing affection and attention towards anything other than Christ leads to dangerous places, and we should be mindful of idolatry if we make bad or even good things into ultimate things, like TV shows, sports, or school, or Davis Smith from last week TeenPact. Here to tell us more about her campaign and message is newly elected President Gould. I sat down with President Gould after putting on a tie and interviewed her about being the first female president of TeenPact and more. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have a really special treat for you. An exclusive interview with newly elected TeenPact Nation President Carissa Gould. Carissa, how are you doing?
I'm so good. How are you, Davis?
You know, I'm actually doing pretty good. So today, I wanted to just talk a little bit about your campaign, your run, and your recent election.
Yeah.
So for those of our viewers who don't know, tell us a little bit about your message and about your campaign, really.
Yeah, so Toby was my running mate, Toby DeMoss, and so we ran with the message of press pause, and basically what we were trying to get across from this message is the idea and the fact that everyone worships something, whether you're a Christian or not, you have idols that you worship, and so what we need to be doing on a daily basis is pressing pause and checking where we are directing our worship. And so the definition of worship is to honor something with extravagant love and extreme submission. So what we were challenging the TeenPact Nation and even people outside of the TeenPact Nation to do with our message is to press pause and check where they were directing their extravagant love and what they were submitting to. And so that was just that's a brief synopsis of the message that we ran with, and it is something that both Toby and I were really passionate about, and we were excited that so many of you guys also got passionate about it. It was really encouraging and fun to see. And then as far as just the campaign goes itself, we started in early February, and basically just once we decided to run, we started building a team and we started talking strategy, and so we announced mid-March, and basically like the goal behind our campaign is we really wanted to have leading up to National Convention, we wanted to have a unique social media presence in order to really catch people's attention, in order to best spread our message. And I think that was something that helped us in the long run. And so we were thankful that we had so many amazing people like campaign managers, and Toby's a really creative guy as well, that helped us come up with those out-of-the-box ideas that helped grab everyone, all the voters' attention, that ultimately got to have the message make a greater impact, because when something is fun to watch, like our videos or something like that, people are more willing and excited to watch the different videos. And I think that that's something our campaign did really well, and something that a lot of other campaigns did this year as well. The Striley Kaufman campaign came out hard with lots of really awesome videos, as well as the Forehand Johnson campaign, who both made it out to the general elections. And so it's cool just to see the way that people stepped up this year in the way that they run their social media campaigns. And so it challenged us to constantly be having a better campaign game as well leading up to National Convention. And so because of that, I think I'm excited to see how campaigns might change next year and how people are going to keep up with the great ways that people kind of raised the bar this past year. But yeah.
Awesome. So, why do you believe that God called you to run for TeenPact president?
I think there are lots of different reasons that I felt called to run for president. It's something that I've always enjoyed running. Like, I ran for representative in 2015 and I lost, and then again in 2016 I ran for representative, and it was an experience that I really, really enjoyed. I enjoy talking on stage. I enjoy answering the questions. I enjoy the opportunities that running for office brings, like getting to talk to so many different people that you wouldn't usually talk to. And so I have kind of already had a passion for the process of running, and so that was one thing that I felt calling me to do to actually run for president. But I think the biggest reason that I felt called to run for president is because of how much I love this ministry, and I want to see it change. And I think that and I chose Toby because I know that Toby has really great ideas, and he wants to see TeenPact change and wants to cast the same sort of vision that I want to. And so I felt called to be president in order to set that vision and in order to make that impact for God's kingdom that I want to make, and that I think that he wants me to make as well. And so that's kind of just how I felt called, and then to also have verbal affirmation from the people around me, which is something that I really appreciate. I think that also just helped affirm my decision to run for president. And yeah.
Gotcha. So you're the TeenPact Nation's first female president. Congratulations.
Thank you.
In our nation's current climate, what do you think that means for TeenPact as an organization?
I think it just shows the people within TeenPact and the people outside of TeenPact that people in TeenPact aren't biased towards a certain gender, and people aren't going to let someone's gender keep them from voting for them strictly because of that. I think that this year people did a really good job of not just voting for the people that they are closest to or voting for someone who is currently the most popular. And I think that Grant and Truman, who made it to the debates as well, they did a really good job of challenging the TeenPact Nation to vote for who they thought was going to best represent the TeenPact Nation and who was most qualified. And so because of that, and because of the impact that was put on that by also the news anchors and the different election analysts that would come in during different times throughout the week at National Convention, I think that it's just an honor to then be elected with that being such an emphasis. And I think that we are continuing that trend, and that because that was put on so much of an emphasis on voting on who you think will best represent the TeenPact Nation and who is qualified, I think that as far as how this is going to be perceived and how this affects like the climate, like you said, of the United States current political situation, that it just shows that gender has nothing to do with qualification. And so I think it's really cool to just see that that being a result of the election this year. But also, I don't think that it is necessarily the focus of the election this year, if that makes sense.
Definitely. So in the context of TeenPact as a whole, whether that be state class, alumni events, or just the organization, what's something that you wish people understood more or took to heart more?
I think that something I wish people took to heart more was the mission statement, or like the slogan that TeenPact has, which is changing lives to change the world. Truman mentioned this in one of his answers during the presidential debate about how he's not in TeenPact to just change lives to change TeenPact, but that we're also supposed to take what we learn at TeenPact and then share it with the world. And I think oftentimes, because of the way that TeenPact is set up, it's very easy to just be like, oh, TeenPact is so great, and the God that I serve and worship when I'm at TeenPact is incredible. But then when we get back to our home lives, we kind of just fall into this slum, and we think that, we'll just, once we get back to the next TeenPact class, we'll be good. But eventually, everyone's time with TeenPact does come to an end. And so I think that's something I wish people took to heart more, was just taking advantage of the things that you learn at TeenPact, whether that be political or spiritual, and then sharing it with the people in your local church and sharing it with the people at your co-ops or your schools. And then taking these things that you have been equipped with from TeenPact and then taking it to college or the workplace or whatever you plan to do after high school. That's something that I wish people took to heart more, with just changing lives to actually change the world, and not just be changed at TeenPact, but be changed after it because of TeenPact.
Yeah, you're definitely right. TeenPact is a super unique organization because not only are you getting leadership training, but you're also getting spiritual training. What would you say the biggest thing is that God has taught you through your time in TeenPact?
I'd have to say that my life is not about me. It's about Jesus, especially through getting the opportunity to staff with TeenPact Leadership Schools for 3 years now. I have realized that in different times in the past, my motives for staffing or my motives for saying something spiritual was very self-focused and very much about me and trying to glorify myself. And so I think that the biggest thing I've learned through TeenPact is just having different conversations with people who I look up to and I respect a lot, who have encouraged me / challenged me / convicted me of those different motives and attitudes that I have, and making me realize that if life was about me, life would actually be the worst, but life can be so much better because it's about Jesus and it's not about me. And so I think that's the biggest thing that I have learned and taken away from TeenPact, and it's a lesson that I am very, very grateful for.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the importance of people not leaving, what they've learned at TeenPact, that it's also important to go out into the world and exhibit those characteristics and not just treat TeenPact as this perfect bubble where everything is great. So what are some ways that you would like to see TeenPacters impact the church and the world at large?
As far as exhibiting the qualities that we learn from TeenPact and then exhibiting those to the world, I think it's important to actually be in the world. We are called to be in the world and not of it. And so I think, kind of like you were saying, oftentimes TeenPact is seen as this little bubble that we like to stay in because it's safe and it's comfortable, while also being very uncomfortable at times, like having to get up and talk in front of a lot of people, but it's comfortable in the sense that we feel safe. I think it's important to go out and step out of your comfort zone and exhibit those qualities that we learn in the real world, whether that be getting a group together to go on the street and evangelize and tell people about Jesus, or whether that be worshiping through song the same way at your church as you do at TeenPact. I think that's something that I've had lots of conversations with people in TeenPact about, how it's like, okay, we worship and serve the same God at home that we do at TeenPact, and I said that earlier. And so I think that it's just one of those things where it's like, once we get to our church, if our church isn't the kind of church that tends to raise their hands or get super passionate during worship through song, we get scared and we feel like we shouldn't get out of our comfort zone by doing those things. But the truth is that you worship the same God at your church that you do at TeenPact. And so I think it's important to live the same way outside of TeenPact that we do inside of TeenPact, whether that be through the way that you worship through song, or the way that you practically and intentionally encourage people, or the way that you study your Bible and different things. And so there's not really a one answer to that question. It's kind of just one of those things where we have to actually live out what we are learning and live out what we are called to do. And I think the biggest way to do that is just by living the same way in outside of TeenPact that we do inside of TeenPact.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, yeah. Well, thanks. Going back a little bit now to the office that you hold, what changes would you like to see in TeenPact during your administration?
I'd like to see the way that elections work change a little bit. I'd like to see it continue to change in the emphasis put on the actual representation of TeenPact. You're not just electing someone who has a cool outfit. You're not just electing someone who is funny. You're electing someone to represent the TeenPact nation to the outside world, and to the new students that will be coming in next year, and to the students that are currently there. And so I think it's important to continue to put that emphasis on that, and to actually continue to build the impact and influence that elected officials can have after national convention, so that it's not just a position that you win and then you're like cool, peace, I'm done, but it's a position that you win, and then you use this incredible position to impact and influence lives and continue that. And so that's one thing that I would like to see change / continue to change. It's something that President Hale and Vice President McHugh put a really good emphasis on last year, and so I'd like to continue that. And I'm actually Toby and I are currently in the works with the office trying to get something together, and hopefully that will be launched in the next week or so, and so I'm excited for that. And then as well, I'd like to see voting change a little bit. This past year and in years past, I know there have been instances of voter fraud through absentee voting, and so I've talked with all of the other elected officials actually, and we're thinking up ways to cut down on that and ways to make absentee voting more secure so that the voter fraud will not happen in the future, as well as just other changes in TeenPact that I think are important. But those are the two big ones that I would like to see change, that I think will help the TeenPact Nation. And yeah.
And this is certainly not the last year for TeenPact elections. There will be future presidents, vice presidents, senators, and representatives. Do you have any advice for anyone in the future who would go for any kind of campaign, whether it be for representative, senator, or a presidential ticket?
Yeah, I think I have 2 pieces of advice that are similar but also like very different. One, make sure that the reason that you're running is the right reason. I think advice that I would give is just to yes, pray about it, and just pray about your heart condition behind running, and pray about the way that you would want to represent the TeenPact Nation and how you would show that to people. And a piece of advice would be to live above reproach while you're running and after you're running, and not just live above reproach because you're running, but because that glorifies God. And so I think that's important in order to show the TeenPact Nation that you would represent them well. So I think that's a big piece of advice. But then also, I would say, don't over spiritualize the decision of running. I think that a lot of people in the past, and not that this is a bad thing, but would be just like, I don't feel called to run because there just isn't a message that's staring me straight in the eyes that I have to absolutely run with. I don't think that you have to like have a message drop in your lap in order to run, and in order to run a really awesome campaign, and a campaign that impacts a lot of lives. There have been campaigns that I've worked on in the past, whether that be presidential, senatorial, or representative campaigns, where we were talking about strategy before we actually had a message nailed down, and then they ended up winning, or they ended up still impacting a lot of lives. And so don't let the fact that you don't have a message right away keep you from running. God is always teaching you something. That's something cool about God, is he's always equipping us and teaching us and training us. And so just think about something that might be, and you can, or even like research. Again, like it doesn't have to be something that you absolutely just feel pressing on your mind. You can think of different things, and maybe you like read a book, or you heard a sermon and there was one line in that sermon that you thought was really, really good, and you wrote it down, and you can build a message off of that. Just don't let over spiritualizing the situation keep you from running a really awesome campaign that can impact a lot of lives.
Awesome. Well, Carissa, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. It's been a huge pleasure.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks, Davis.
And that concludes our show for tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in. Follow us on Facebook and on Instagram. Good night.
I hear it's great. You should probably go. That's what people have told me. But I wouldn't know. I've never been.